We have a lot to cover in today's video, including lots of rumors around the NHL, including more trade talk around Mitch Marner, the Toronto Maple Leafs. A big idea has been floating around social media about what the Leafs should do if they do proceed with the Marner trade. Plus, there's a major coaching rumor around the NHL that could see a domino effect and involves 3 or 4 coaches, maybe all swapping spots. We'll discuss that. Obviously, some coaches are possibly still going to be let go from their current jobs. There's lots of teams looking at new coaches, and there could be like a major swing on who goes where. Plus, we have the finalists for the Norris Trophy. More playoff eliminations last night with the Islanders and Jets being done now in the playoffs. Lots of signings and other news around the NHL coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here today. Start first with some news from the NHL playoffs last night. Of course, we had 4 elimination games, and 2 games ended with victories that caused eliminations, and 2 teams survived. So the Maple Leafs and Predators both forced Game 6. The Leafs came up with a big effort without Auston Matthews, and Matthew Knies wins it in overtime. In my opinion, I think Boston head coach Jim Montgomery made unnecessary changes. They had won 2 straight games, and he made a bunch of changes to his lineup that I thought was completely unnecessary. I don't know why he did that. And then at the same time, I thought the Bruins didn't play well. They had every opportunity to win that game and take the Leafs out, and they didn't. Toronto wins the game. They got their opportunities when they seized it, but I tell you, Boston had every chance to win that game, and they didn't. So I think the pressure now flips over to Boston. They had a 3-1 collapse last year to Florida. Is the same thing going to happen again? We'll have to see. Be interesting to watch Game 6 tomorrow night. The Predators survived along against the Vancouver Canucks, of course. So we're heading back to Game 6 there. That's been a very tight series, low shots, not a ton of goals. Be curious to see how things work out. I don't know what Vancouver's going to be doing between the pipes in the next one. Unfortunately, the Jets and the Islanders are done. They could not overcome the powerhouses they were up against. In the case of the Islanders, we knew they were outmatched and massive underdogs to beat the Hurricanes. And, I don't think anybody's too shocked and surprised. And unfortunately, they fell in Game 5, and they were done. In the case of the Jets, though, the Jets had a phenomenal regular season, dominated the Avalanche, got to the playoffs, and absolutely collapsed. That strong team defense, they're one of the top 3 to 5 defensive teams in the league with a Vezina-winning goaltender, and the defense has gone astray. The goaltending has been the worst the Hellbucks ever been. It's a head-scratcher. I honestly think they need a new coach. I think there's been some weird decisions that way too when it comes to their roster. I like Rick Bowness. I know he's been in the game a long time, well respected. He's done a lot, but I think it's time for change behind that bench again after a couple of years of Bowness hockey there. I mean, he's done a good job to correct some things that were problematic under the previous regime. Not that it was Paul Maurice's fault before that. I don't think it was, but obviously the team needed some change and they got it, but I think it needs further change to really have a chance to move forward. Yeah, that's an epic collapse. The Jets have to really do some analyzing for sure. Tonight, there's only 2 games. So of course, both series go tonight are the Golden Knights and the Stars. We know that's not going to be an elimination game because it's Game 5. Series is tied 2-2. The series shifts back to Dallas. And then, of course, Edmonton, LA. The Kings could be eliminated tonight. We'll see if they can force Game 6 and head back to Los Angeles as they have Game 5 tonight. In the Oilers barn. Lots of other news around the NHL. We get the Norris Finalists. Of course, Canucks captain Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar of the Avalanche, and Roman Josi, captain of the Predators. All 3 had phenomenal seasons. I do expect Quinn Hughes to likely be the winner. I think he had the best season. I'm not sure that he's the best defenseman. They're all really, really good, mind you. I don't think you can go wrong too much if you have one of these guys on your team. Personally, I find Cale Makar the most dynamic out of the bunch. That's just my opinion. But I think overall, with what we've seen, Hughes probably wins. Josi had a phenomenal year as well, and he's pretty consistent year after year after year. So we'll see when the award is finally announced on who the winner is. We got lots of other news around the NHL, including some prospect signings and some other news regarding some other players on different rosters. So let's start with a couple things regarding the Hurricanes. They've signed prospect goalie Ruslan Kaziev, who was he gets a 3-year entry-level contract. He was a 5th-round pick in the 2023 NHL draft, so they signed that prospect. They've also got word that Brett Pesce's been removed from his walking boot that he was in, and he is a possibility for round 2 of NHL playoff action. Now, he may not likely be available at the beginning of the round, but as the series progresses and as we get to the middle to the later part of it, it sounds like there's a decent chance that Pesce could play. So that's good. And Carolina is also expected, according to Don Waddell, to likely have something announced soon as far as having a new AHL affiliate for their NHL prospects. We know that the Hurricanes didn't have a dedicated affiliate this year. The prospects are kind of scattered all over. It's not really an ideal situation, and it's not great, but that's about to be resolved. It's possible and expected that it might turn out to be the Chicago Wolves again. Of course, the Wolves became an independent AHL franchise last year and didn't have an affiliate team. So all of their players were basically on loan or signed to AHL-only contracts. So I'm not sure, but it is speculation it could turn out to be them again. I'm not really sure what else could happen in the AHL to create an opportunity there. So we'll see, unless 2 other teams decide to share an affiliate and opens up a spot or something. But yeah, that's expected to be announced here in the very near future. A couple of signings in St. Louis. They got a couple of prospects under contract now. They've signed prospect Simon Robertson, 3-year ELC. He's been over in the SHL in Sweden. He was a 2021 3rd-round pick. And they also signed their 1st-round pick from last year in 2023, Otto Stenberg, also another Swedish pick. He gets his 3-year ELC. The centerman, like I said, was a late 1st-round pick in last year's draft and is expected to make the jump to North America here soon. So that's good news for St. Louis. They've been getting a lot of signings here done as of late. A couple of other news items as well. In the Vegas-Dallas Stars game tonight, Logan Thompson's going to be sitting out, will be the backup. Aiden Hill's getting the start in Vegas, which is also a bit of a surprise move. I don't think the losses are on Thompson, but we'll see. Aiden Hill did help them get to the Stanley Cup last year, but down the stretch this year didn't really seem right and hasn't been the greatest. So we'll see how that works out for Vegas. We also got word as well that Washington Capitol defenseman Ethan Bear is finally now officially released from the player assistance program. So that's great, and he can hopefully start to move forward towards next year in preparation for that. So lots of news on that front. Now, as I mentioned, some big rumors around the coaching world. Darren Dreger put out some information earlier suggesting that Rod Brind'Amour, we know that he is in a contract negotiation to remain with the Carolina Hurricanes, and that he's been with that organization forever. He went from being a player to retiring. Then he went into, I believe he was first with player development. Then he went into an assistant coaching role. And then after they moved on from Bill Peters, then he got the head coaching role. And he's been there ever since. He's done a phenomenal job. Now he's considered one of the game's top coaches. He's up for a contract extension. And there was word that things were getting close, but Dreger is saying today now, TSN Insider, that the offer was pulled. And is believed to be pulled by owner Tom Dundon. So, but there's been comments from Dundon saying that he expects that this deal to get done soon, that everything that was requested, that he's been fine with. I know part of the process for Rod Brind'Amour the last time around as well is he wants to make sure his assistant coaches are looked after just as well as him, and that they're well compensated and they all have fair market value contracts. And he's been really adamant on that. It's not just about him, it's the entire staff. And I wonder if there could be issues there. We don't know. It just seemed like things were getting close, and now Dregs is saying that the deal was pulled off the table. So we don't know what's going on there. I think it's fair to say if Rod Brind'Amour becomes a free agent coach after this season, that he's going to go right to the top of the list for most of the teams that are looking for a new head coach. I wouldn't be surprised if other teams are willing to fire their guy and bring Brind'Amour in as well. Like, the lineup would be crazy long. He's a phenomenal coach and would be in high demand for sure. He's also going to be looking for upwards of $7 million a year, reportedly. I know Ottawa reporter Bruce Garriock was talking about the Ottawa Senators coaching search and mentioned that if Brind'Amour became available, especially where he is an Ottawa native, that's where he's from, that he would go right to the top of their list. And as much as they would have super high interest on the Ottawa side. He doesn't know that they'd be wanting to pay $7 million to a coach at this stage of where the franchise is at. So that might really not work out and, get very far, even if they do talk to him. So hard to say what could happen. We had seen reports from Kevin Weeks before recently in the last week or so saying that he fully expects that we could see the Mike Babcock contract surpassed and a new record for coaching salary could be made here with one of these new upcoming hires. As I mentioned, besides the Brind'Amour speculation, there's lots of talk as well about a potential domino effect and rumors in the coaching world that could see 3 or 4 coaches changing place. Lots of talk around with Pittsburgh kind of being in the middle of it. As I mentioned before, there's expectations if the Leafs don't have a good run here and they're down 3-2 to the Bruins, that if Sheldon Keefe is fired, that he could end up in Pittsburgh. There's already, besides what the Leafs do and what Keefe is available or not available, there's already a lot of talk about the Penguins and from their beat writers saying that there appears to be a bit of a power struggle, if you will, between GM Kyle Dubas and Mike Sullivan, and that there seem to be some level of possibility that Sullivan does leave the Penguins. So essentially, the rumor would be is that Keefe loses the job in Toronto, comes to work for his good pal Kyle in Pittsburgh. Sullivan obviously is no longer there. He's a lot of his contract fired, released, whatever you want to call it. And then he goes to work with his good buddy, Tom Fitzgerald, in New Jersey. And then, of course, that makes Travis Green available. Travis Green is one of the candidates that talked to the Senators. Not to say that he's right at the top of their list, but they did interview him. He is allowed to interview with other teams, even though he is the interim head coach until they make a decision. The Devils thought it was fair that if they're going to interview other people, that he could do the same. Ottawa's also reportedly looking at guys like Craig Berube, Dean Evison. Todd Nelson's another name to watch there as well. A very well-accomplished AHL coach, a very well-respected guy. He's won a lot at the AHL level, and I wouldn't be shocked if he's near the top of their list. Of course, he's still in the playoffs with the Hershey Bears right now, so they may not be able to talk to him for a little while. And of course, Toronto, they'd have guys like Berube and Evison at the top of their list too, should Keefe be moved and be fired. So we'll see, but there could be a major coaching carousel update there in that regard. So we'll see. Some talk about the Florida Panthers. Of course, we know they're still here in the Stanley Cup playoffs, getting ready to play the second round against either the Leafs or the Bruins. Expectation is they have a good shot to make another deep run here. One of the big names they have to re-sign, though, is Sam Reinhart. Sam Reinhart's going to be one of the top upcoming UFAs if he makes it to that part, but there's belief that there's mutual desire between Reinhart and the Panthers to get a long-term deal done and keep him in Florida's organization. Now, of course, it's not going to come easy, but at the same time, he likely will take less to stay there than go to another market, given the tax advantage that they have in that state. And, obviously he wants to win and he wants to be competitive, and, there is some value in that as well. At the same time, the Panthers right now project to be just over $20 million in cap space. But outside of Reinhart, they also have to sign 2 of their top defensemen with Montour and Forsling. Not to mention that you have a backup goaltender that needs a contract in Stolarz, who's been really good. Or if they bring up Spencer Knight, that's going to eat into their space as well, because obviously he's making over $4 million. So his contract could impact their cap right now. Part of that's buried in the minors. So that could have an impact there. At the same time, they've also got a bunch of their other depth pieces that need contracts as well. Like Okposo's a free agent, Cousins, Stephen Lawrence, Kulikov. Like, there's a bunch of other guys that they'd have to replace, and even though they're cheaper contracts, it's still just getting your top 2 defensemen with Montour and Forsling signed is going to eat up a good amount of that money. You signed Reinhart, well, somebody else is probably going to have to go, and there's talk that the cap cut or whatever you want to call it might be Sam Bennett. They love Bennett there. It plays a big role for them. But I do wonder if he could be a casualty in that regard. I've seen some speculation that if he became available because of cap reasons, that the Devils would be a team to watch that'd be all over that. They need to add some grit in with their skill, and he would be a tremendous fit there. So we'll see. Florida is very much expected to do everything they can to keep Reinhart, but it likely will cost them another player. Just a matter of how they go about managing their salary cap. situation. Now, of course, as I mentioned a few days ago, all the rage and all the rumors from all the insiders right now is what the Leafs are going to do if they don't get out of this first round series against the Boston Bruins. And all signs seem to point to Mitch Marner kind of being the scapegoat here and the most likely player that would be moved. Like I said before, though, in the other video talking about it, he has a full no-move clause, and he's going to have a lot of control here. And if he doesn't want to go anywhere, then they're not going to trade him. But at the same time, if he's had enough of the hometown pressure and all the media and the scrutiny, and decides, you know what, maybe this is best for me if I do go, then perhaps we could see a big trade. One that's been suggested, this one came from Greg Wyshynski of ESPN, suggesting that we know the new Utah team wants to make a big splash. Would they consider a Marner trade, of course, with an extension, and move maybe Clayton Keller? You know, Clayton Keller is obviously a name that they've already kind of promoted to their new fans, but, you know, to bring in a guy like Marner would be a big deal here as well. Now, of course, we can't really say that Keller would be a better playoff performer than Marner. We haven't seen Keller in the playoffs either, so we don't know how that would connect. I mean, you know, offensively speaking, his numbers aren't quite as good as Marner in the regular season, but certainly his contract is a lot less. Could be a good balance. We know Keller, of course, played in the U.S. program. I'm sure there's some familiarity. I think he and Matthews definitely know each other. So, like, you know, there is connections there to think that he might be a good fit with them, but at the same time, you know, this is a trade that involved two bigger names, two bigger salaries. Of course, Keller, like I said, a longtime Coyote, would be now part of this new Utah team, and he and Nick Schmaltz were kind of the two main players they were trotting out there with experience, at least with longer contracts, to the Utah fans. So obviously it doesn't mean they won't do some serious business, though, of course. Another trade that was suggested as well came from a different, I think it was Nick Alberga as well of Daily Faceoff. He said he wondered about Marner to the Islanders for Ilya Sorokin, because the Leafs could definitely need a goaltender. Although I don't know that the Islanders would want to move Sorokin. I know he's, you know, had a bit of a tough time lately. He hasn't been getting the starts in the playoffs, but he's signed to a long-term deal, and he's been one of the top 5 goalies in the regular season. You know, trading him would be really risky. I mean, Varlamov is good. He signed for a few more years, but then what do you do after that? Like, they could be screwed long-term. So I'm not sure that the Islanders do that. But, you know, a trade for a guy like Keller in Utah, to me, that would make more sense. It doesn't mean that Utah would absolutely love that idea, but we know, like you said, that they want to bring in some big names. We know they want to spend some money and invest in this team and get the names out there to make a splash. Marner would be a way to do that. So we'll see. I don't know. Obviously, we got to get through this first round series and see where the playoffs end for the Leafs before we can really analyze what kind of significant change is more possible than not with this franchise. If they pull themselves together and have a 7-game series and come back and beat the Bruins and go on to do some other things, well, all those talk would be for naught. Winning does solve all the problems in the NHL, and losing teams obviously get lots of scrutiny around them, lots of talk, speculation about change, and then as soon as you start winning, all that goes away. So we'll see. The Leafs got some work to do, and we'll determine what kind of significant change. But let me know your thoughts of a Marner versus Keller trade, if that's something that makes sense, if indeed the Leafs do lose early and they want to shake up this core. And that certainly would accomplish that. Let me know your thoughts on everything discussed today in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.